All right, welcome back to the Mint City or the Minty Mobile Gaming Podcast, the most infrequent, most inconsistent podcast on the planet. Today, we have a very special guest who actually reached out to me from my last episode to see if we could kind of get a collab going. Variety mobile gaming content creators are few and far between, especially the active ones. And Gaming in the Moment is here. So I'm really excited to get to know him better. We hopped on like not even 5 minutes ago. I know nothing about the guy other than his great content. So I'm excited to get to know him, and I hope you guys are too, and vice versa. So without further ado, I'm just gonna hop straight into it. Um, Feel free to introduce yourself, Gaming in the Moment, however you want to take that. The moment is yours.
All right. Yeah. So I am gaming in the moment. I'm, really excited to be here. I've reached out to Mint City beforehand. I took a hiatus for about like 6 months, getting some personal things as well as some work life related things settled down. And I asked to do the podcast back then, and I was kind of glad I didn't just because I would be taking that hiatus. But now that I'm here, I'm really excited to get into it and just really get back into the mobile gaming ecosystem and the atmosphere. I know that Mint City as well as Nimble Thor, two really big uh, YouTubers on the scene, and so I'm really excited to just get to know Mint City a little bit better because he mentioned earlier that this is the first time that we're talking, and so it'll be an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad that you mentioned the hiatus, and I did notice that. I've been like kind of just following your content in the background. I always like have these certain not smaller channels, but like newer channels that I'll kind of follow and really root for them because like I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm like, we'll see if they make it 6 months, like 3 to 6 months. That's usually the make or break.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think I
made it
made it
past
about
that
six
point.
months.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the hiatus, I was like, gosh, dang it, this dude had so much potential. And then I'm so glad you reached out because I didn't realize like 3 months ago, am I correct? You
Yeah, it
came back?
sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, around 3 months. So that was such a pleasant surprise. So again, thank you for being here. I actually started this podcast late, and he was so nice and gracious. He just stayed in here and waited for me. So very grateful. Don't take it for granted. But I have some questions to ask you, just to get to know you better and allow the viewers and listeners to get to know you better as well. Um, what initially got you into the mobile gaming space or what into mobile gaming in general?
Yeah, so I think the first mobile game that I remembered playing was like Tap Tap Revolution back in the day. And so I didn't play mobile games for probably the longest time in my life. I was one of those diehard either console or PC. Mobile games are terrible. But as I got older, as I had more responsibilities and had less time for gaming, I guess that really showed a need in myself that I really still liked gaming, and I didn't have the amount of time to dedicate to most AAA releases or just even most titles that are released nowadays that you need to devote 30, 40 hours into them. And so mobile gaming was really that outlet for me that provided me that bite-sized fix of gaming, if you will. And I have played quite a few mobile games since then. I've reviewed like 100 games on the channel at this point, and I really like a lot of things that mobile gaming has to offer. That bite-sized, uh, you know, entrance into gaming. But I think the bigger thing is that the community is something that I was not expecting to be that so welcoming. Silent Rocco is one of those big ones that I reached out to and was like,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, man, what do you think about me starting up a mobile gaming channel?" I actually reached out to him before I started up a channel itself, and he's like, "You just go into it. We're a great community, and the subreddits for both the Android and the iOS subreddits are a great group of people that are always willing to offer some great games, those hidden gems."
For sure. I'm glad you kind of shouted out Silent Rocco. I always joke with him that he could easily be the best mobile gaming content creator the YouTube platform has to offer if he wasn't already incredibly good at being a mime. So
Yeah,
if you guys didn't know, he's a professional mime and his content is amazing. He definitely deserves some more love, and he knows his mobile games inside and out. He rules the Reddit page for mobile gaming, in my opinion, or iOS gaming. His posts
yeah,
always are super insightful.
yeah. He's one of the bigger reviewers on App Raven, which is a great app for those that are on iOS. That just compiles all of the different mobile games on there, and you've got a bunch of people that are willing to review, give their insights on there, and he's probably one of the top producers on there. But I agree with you 100%. He would just get on and, like, if he wanted to at any point, just pivot or just add that as a complimentary thing. Doesn't even have to dedicate himself to it. He just has a lot of knowledge in the mobile gaming sphere for sure.
Yeah, and it also kind of attests to what you also mentioned is kind of like the more bite-sized accessibility of mobile gaming. Like I know that Silent Rocco is also a minimalist to a degree, and
Hmm.
so he just has his phone. He tries to minimize his amount of possessions, and he's still able to be a gamer. So that's a really good point as well. Very similar for me as well. I would say I wasn't. I've told this story again, so I'm gonna nutshell it on the channel before. But Vainglory is what really opened my eyes to mobile games. I really liked the kind of flash game esque apps of the early years, where it was just kind of high score chasers, super simple iPod Touch games. But Vainglory is what really made me feel like, hey, like the console quality experience. I'm very similar to you, where I really liked console quality experiences can be had on mobile. And honestly, Vainglory is still my favorite MOBA to date, and it was made years ago. So mobile gaming as a platform, it's such an interesting mix of accessibility, bite-sized while also being binge-worthy at the same
Hmm.
time, depending on what you're wanting to play. It's just whatever you need it to be, which is very rare in the gaming space. The older I get, the less I want a 40-hour plus experience like you kind of were alluding to earlier. I like more like 10 hours or less experiences is what I'm gravitating towards, I think,
Would 100%
personally.
agree with that. Vainglory, surprisingly, also loved Vainglory. I liked it before they went to the 5v5. Didn't like the 5v5 as much. I
That's where
loved,
I fell off. Yeah.
yeah, loved the 3v3. Probably played that more than I should have at the time.
Same.
And yeah, but
What was your
it's
position?
um. So I don't know. I don't remember the characters enough. Um,
But like, were you
I love
lane
playing
or were
support.
you
Support.
jungle?
I played
Support.
support.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
always played
Taking
support.
one for the
Lance
team.
support. Yeah,
Hmm.
land support was my favorite. But I loved that game, and it was one of those games that it was one of the great MOBAs, at least on mobile specifically, just because you could play it, and I think game rounds were at max like 15 minutes more often than not.
Hmm.
And so with MOBAs especially, you're looking at 30, 45 to an hour long game, and so grinding those out, especially in the ranked ladder, was super fun.
Oh, 100%. I think that's why I've always only been able to get into mobile MOBAs because an hour-long commitment for a match or a possible hour-long commitment is just so tough for me nowadays. I don't know why. But that
Yeah.
15 to 20-minute sweet spot that Vainglory offered was just, man, what a magical time. I'm getting really nostalgic and also very sad that Vainglory is just on life support, honestly. But
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that was awesome getting to know a little bit about what got you into it. So thank goodness you're into it now and you can create content. But that kind of brings us into, don't worry, that's not the last question we have to ask Gaming in the Moment. But what mobile games are you currently playing?
So I post on the subreddit quite often and give people a little preview of the two games that are going to be coming up. So at least right now, the two games I'm looking at Evoland, which is a classic, going through all of the history almost of gaming and how RPGs came into the mix and all of the development that's gone on behind the scenes. So that one, and I'm also playing Juicy Realm. I am a huge fan of rogue light and light, and so any one of those that are in the genre, just immediately want to try out and test out. Whether that's a deck building focused one, whether that's a FPS focused one, whatever. Love that genre particularly. So those are the two games that I'm currently playing right now. That being said, there are some games that I always go back to because they're great. Doncaster, great example. I think that game is one of the best deck building games on the platform, in my opinion, and in
Amen.
general. I prefer
Yep.
it more than Slay the Spire. I'm really
Amen.
excited. Yeah, really excited for Monster Train to come out. I played Monster Train on PC, but I'm hoping that the transition to mobile will be, just as great as it was on PC. I think
Hmm.
that Titan Quest is another one. I just recently played it, and as somebody who's waiting for Path of Exile 2 to come out on mobile,
Hmm.
because I've heard that it is, I just loved it. And then probably another one that I only recently played, but I played a little bit on PC was Hades. You're seeing a lot of ports that are just, you know, transition to mobile really well, just because either A, the bite-sized nature of it, or B, as somebody who just is always on the go, being able to enjoy those games that I wouldn't be able to enjoy otherwise is something that I don't take for granted at this point.
For sure. I think it's definitely not coincidence that you really like roguelikes, and
Yeah,
roguelites are constantly coming to mobile because I feel like that formula of the one more try or one more run just lends itself super well to the bite-sized as well as binge-worthy play sessions that we were kind of talking about earlier. Um, Monster Train is released, by the way. I wanted to
oh, it's
mention
already
that.
out.
Yeah, it's been out for a while and it's really good. I'd say the only problem is the text size is a little bit small. I don't know. I haven't played it in a while since release. That was my only. I actually reviewed the game back when I was actually posting reviews. By the way, uh, Gaming in the Moment posts reviews almost exclusively. So if you guys need your gaming reviews, go to him because my lazy ass is not going to review every game. That's for sure. But he posts super well thought out and detailed reviews and tells you everything you need to know while also respecting your time. I don't think I've ever seen a review that's longer than like 10 minutes from you. Am I correct?
Correct. I try to keep it under 6 minutes.
Hmm.
Definitely in that respecting people's time thing. As well as I feel like reviews nowadays are just so drawn out. Like you don't need some of the information that people give. I think giving your personal experience is great. As well
Hmm.
as just the highlights of what is important to keep in mind. So I think that the confusion that I got was I saw a article. Monster Train Plus is coming out for
Oh,
the Apple
plus. Oh,
Arcade.
with Apple Arcade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was specifically waiting on.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was out anyways though, so that's awesome. I might have to pull the trigger fast on that one then.
Oh, for sure. I think like this might also be a hot take. I'm glad you already broke the ice, and I agree with your hot take that Slay the Spire is not the best roguelike deck
Oh,
builder,
yeah,
and Doncaster is on mobile. I'm 100% with you on that. I'd say it's
yeah,
a close second is Monster Train for sure. I
yeah.
loved Monster Train a lot. So,
Yeah.
well, you have a
I
great taste.
yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on Doncaster. Did I think that's probably the game that I've spent the most time on before I actually reviewed it. I I actually am a person that has just a giant spreadsheet that records all of the games that I've ever reviewed, and the amount of time that I've spent on each one of them. So I'm a big believer in organization and Excel and all of that. So yeah, Doncaster is the game that I have spent the most time on. I spent 25 hours before I decided to just say, hey, I think I've played the game enough. But even then, it's not even beginning to scratch the surface of everything that the game has to offer.
Yeah, that totally makes sense because I am blown away with how consistently they release expansions for the game. Like they
Hmm.
just did actually last week, right? A brand new expansion,
I
I
believe so.
think.
Yeah, I believe I saw it on the Reddit.
And they're always so jealous, not jealous. What in the world? They're always so generous too because they always release a set of free cards in each expansion, so you can still,
Hmm.
if you don't want to drop money on the expansion initially, you can try out those new cards or new areas or new mechanics, and then purchase that expansion whenever you're able to. So I'm a big fan of the devs. They're super responsive. They actually helped me with a giveaway on this channel a while back for some codes for the game too. So they're definitely devs that deserve your support. So if you guys haven't finally pulled the trigger on Doncaster, I think this is your sign. Definitely check it out. I will probably link it in the description down below, because it's amazing that, as far as to my knowledge, they've only kept it on mobile too, which honestly is kind of limiting their customer base, in my opinion, because the game is truly that good that I think if
Would
it
agree.
was released on Steam, it'd instantly become a classic.
Yeah,
For
I would
sure.
100% agree with that. It is absolutely great. And man, talking about it kind of makes me want to go back and play again though, which
Oh, and
isn't good for me. It's someone that has to go from game to game, but it's yeah, it's something that shouldn't be missed if you haven't already. Definitely go check it out. Not
yeah,
sponsored, but would love to be sponsored, right?
yeah, amen to that. It's funny that you said that, because we have to kind of jump. I've mentioned this before in previous podcast episodes, but as content creators, we're having to kind of jump from game to game and make sure that we're not spending too much time on one game, because we have to keep that content at least flowing to some degree. But that's kind of a little bit of a segue, and we can talk about that further, that specific point further. But what got you into content creation from the get-go? Because like getting into mobile gaming, we learned that, but getting into the content creation side, especially the niche of variety mobile gaming content, that is pretty rare. So how did you get here into creating content for this niche?
Man, that one's actually a little different for me probably than most people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a person that you mentioned flash games earlier, that when I was younger, I would sit on like Newgrounds and just review all of the new games that came in and just give a bunch of people, my critiques on them, what they can do to improve the game. Um,
Mm.
and I've always really liked watching reviews. When I was younger, I would sit there and just have like IGN playing in the background of all the new reviews. I would always go to GameSpot, whatever the newest review was, and just look for that new information. And as I transitioned into having to basically just play mobile games because of the time commitment and because of the flexibility that they allow, um, I realized that there weren't too many content creators or there weren't too many platforms that specifically focused on mobile games and didn't provide it through a means in which was either A, consistent, or B, in my opinion, uh, digestible, where it wasn't just over the top, somebody screaming at you kind of thing. Because a lot of content creators nowadays, like that's the big thing. It's like you have to have a bunch of jump cuts and you have to be screaming at your audience.
The Mr.
And
Beast special, or at previous Mr. Beast special. Yeah.
But I think that I was like, hey, there's a hole that needs to be filled to some capacity, and there are some content creators that do a good job, but they focus on broader swaths of the mobile gaming sphere. And I was like, I might as well just go out there and try to do it. And so that's how I specifically focused on mobile gaming. Content creation in general has been one of those weird things for me, where I mean, I'll talk a little bit about it in a bit, but I have a creative outlet through my profession, and
Hmm.
I was like, "Hey, I might as well try to see if I can do this little YouTube thing as well." And so part of it was just wanting to try it out and see what happens as a result. And I did a couple of videos. I'm one of those people that's not ashamed of my first videos. They're not great, but I'm definitely going to say that I've grown a lot since then. And I'm sure that every content creator can relate. And so the growth
Hmm.
process behind it has really driven me to continue to just want to make more content.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very similar beginning to me as well. I really relate with you were naturally already reviewing games on Newgrounds. Like you already had that innate kind of desire to share your thoughts on certain games and stuff and your critiques, and you had fun doing it, obviously, because there was, I mean, if you're leaving a review on Newgrounds, only other players are going to read that, you know. So you
Hmm.
had that inherent desire. I totally relate with that. I used to write app store reviews, obviously, for certain games that I was getting into. But what really got me into it is like I've always enjoyed writing. I haven't kept up with it anymore, but I used to write for Touch Arcade back in the day.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed that. I wrote for Touch Arcade for about a year, and it was a really cool little like side gig. It like the money was actually pretty good for the time, I would say too. But during college, it was just like so much writing, and so I eventually left Touch Arcade after a year. But I really enjoyed writing mobile game reviews, and I was like, and mistakenly, I was like, "Oh, YouTube can't take as long as writing a review would take. I'll just get into that." Little did I know, editing is just as long, if not more. Um, so I think that's a really cool beginning. I definitely relate with that, and just having an inherent desire or kind of fun, just sharing your thoughts on certain things. I think when you're passionate about a subject to a certain degree, you just want to share your thoughts, and sometimes you want to share those thoughts in a really organized manner so other people can benefit, or maybe you're like, I would benefit from this if someone shared this. So
For
that's really
sure.
cool.
Yeah, anyone
That's
that's never done YouTube doesn't understand how much goes on behind the scenes. Like, yes, there are some great YouTubers that just turn on a video and just start talking to the video, and that's the video.
yeah.
But I especially for gaming as a platform, there's more often than not you're going to require quite a bit of editing to go on with it, as well as compiling your thoughts and getting all of that information together. So you've mentioned that, and I find it really funny because I had on my subreddit that's just specifically just covering all the games where people are able to filter whatever games they like. Somebody asked, how long did this take? And I did like rough calculations. Up to this point, I've dedicated, let's say, about 1,100 ish hours to YouTubing, and that probably doesn't even begin to touch how much you've done, Mint City.
No, it adds up. It's insane. Like I have a like on that subject, like I've never like added or done up the hours that I've spent like editing in iMovie or anything. But I have like a little side channel for my console gaming that I occasionally post to, mainly just for my squad or my buddies. And it's like an Apex channel. And I edit everything within an editing program on my PS5, strangely enough. And
Oh wow!
the PS5 measures how much time you spend within any game, and it counts that editing program as a game. And it's like a couple hundred hours at this point. And I was like, this is my side channel. I can't imagine how much time I've spent editing videos for the main channel. So yeah, people really don't realize how much time and effort goes into the back end of this stuff. And obviously, over time, we get better at it, and we kind of get in the routine, and we streamline a few processes. But I don't know about you, but recording my voice and saying what I need to say while also not making sure it's not robotic and it's like off the cuff almost or more natural. That's what I spend the most time doing, at least outside of the editing process, is having to re-say stuff. Like sometimes I'll be like trying to describe a game and it'll take like 30 takes. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah, I have a big difficulty with that. So for me, I am super dyslexic, right? And so I write a script more often than not, but I don't write a script word for word. I
Mm,
write it with, little block text and little subpoints for everything that I want to discuss. And
mm-hmm,
then whenever the time comes around, I try to get, some editing software, some speech to text software so that I can have the closed captions ready for anyone that's listening that has audio impairment or whatever. I
mm.
think that like having that and making sure that it's accessible for everyone um, is it's difficult for me to create just because of somebody who is really dyslexic and can't read a script kind of shape a lot of how I decide to go along with creating the content itself. Um, and so, yeah, I get it. There's multiple times where I'll say something and I'll be like, yeah, that doesn't necessarily even sound right. I have to redo that entire block of information because I didn't write anything beforehand. And so I have to redo the whole thing.
Wow, that's like super impressive. I'm glad you made that point too, because that's something I haven't necessarily. My supervisor at work is actually dyslexic, so that's where I've gotten a lot of how dyslexia can affect a person, and it's
Hmm.
amazing how much my supervisor has persevered through that, and you would never know unless he told you. So that's even more impressive that you're doing all of this, and I'm sure you've learned throughout life. You've learned ways to what would be the correct verbiage for that? Like to usurp it, or I don't know.
I mean,
Th-
I think for me,
yeah,
it's just learning to deal with it, right? You
yeah,
learn,
yeah.
you just find some ways to accommodate whatever it is that you're working on. And
Accommodations. That's what I'm
yeah,
looking for. Yeah,
uh,
that's
you know,
super cool.
you mentioned you're in grad school. I just finished my master's program last year, and one of the funny,
Congrats.
yeah, I just funniest conversations I would have with teachers is just I would tell them I can't read. Like never calling me in class to read out loud. My reading is I'll look at a block of text and look at the information that I think is important from that text, and then I'll just move on to the next block. I
Yeah.
can't read sentence by sentence.
So you
And
permanently
so,
skim, kind of
yes,
like you skim read. Okay.
yeah. And so I was always a funny conversation in classes when I would tell my teacher, hey, I can't, don't call me to read. I can't do it.
Dude, seriously, congrats on completing your master's program. Like, if I'm sure of you listening that have gone through upper level educations of any sort, especially I assume you're working during it as well. That's the hardest balance, I think. Man, master's program, it's already difficult as is. Then you add in the dyslexia with that, and then you're working at the same time. You're a champ, dude. And I feel like I thought you wrote out your scripts. That's so impressive to me that you only do bullet points because you're super well spoken. Your sentence structures and how detailed your information comes across. It feels scripted but not robotic, if that makes sense. So kudos to you, man. That's
Yeah,
really
you get
really
to
cool.
make highlight points and you discuss, I think, and more often than not, like what I really want to talk about. And I'll throw in a couple sentences here and there, but it's like a sentence or two max before I need to move on to another thought. And then I just talk about it to the capacity that I want to talk about it.
We're getting all of the tips. We're getting the secret behind the scenes from gaming in the moment. This is pretty awesome. That's so impressive. I always love learning about the creators themselves and how they create. And you mentioned the accessibility. One last point, and I really am glad that you said that because I have never thought about like making sure that I'm enunciating my words correctly so that it can have captions correctly typed out and
Mhm.
worded. So that's definitely from this podcast onwards, I'm gonna definitely add that in as a goal for my channel. So I appreciate you bringing that up and making sure that it's as accessible as possible to people. That's a really cool thing that you've already incorporated into your content so early on. So kudos to you on that as well. Um, but we've gotten to know a little bit about you just from those questions. But now I want to know who are you outside of content creation and mobile gaming? Like what hobbies do you enjoy? What interests do you have? And you can take that any way you want.
Yeah. So I think that this kind of would be a little indicative of the right, like the speaking style, I guess, that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, hobbies, I am lucky enough to do my hobbies as work. So one of my hobbies is debate. I did debate, intercollegiate debate, and I am now operating as a head debate coach for a local community college. And that shaped a lot of how I process information as well as how I articulate information. So anything relating to just debate and policy, all of this stuff, I'm a big fan of. I like really well constructed and well thought out ideas. I've always told people I don't have to agree with anything that you say, but as long as you say it in a way that is clear, concise, and I understand how you got to where you got to, I am more than happy to listen. So that's one of my biggest hobbies is just anything relating to debate. I'm actually developing AI right now for debate as well. So I've learned a lot more about AI. I have another, so I have three jobs. Um, the other one
Holy
is,
cow.
yeah. The other one is CFO for a family company. So financials, personal finance is something that I'm really passionate about. Getting people set up for their financial future and having those difficult discussions is, I think, very enjoyable because it at least gives them peace of mind after it's all said and done.
Mm.
And the last thing is for that same college, I actually write grants. So I write for a living. Um, and a lot of that came from how I learned how debate functions. The grant world is very similar. It's very formulaic in how you present information, and so I try to stay busy. Don't have much free time for gaming, and so in the free time that I do have, It's in bite-sized chunks, and so that's why mobile gaming definitely fits that for me.
Oh, it's all coming together now. It totally makes sense. Uh, that's a rarity nowadays, I would say. Like, I really liked how you described why you like debate, and you're willing to listen as long as you can understand how their thought process reaches that end point. So
Yeah,
that's really rare to encounter nowadays. So I totally get why you enjoy debate. I know who I'm going to when I need to prove a point. Not kidding. and and 3 jobs, that's impressive, but it all incorporates your interests, your passions, and what you enjoy doing too, which will equal longevity. So you're living the dream, dude. Well done on finding what you enjoy and going out there and
absolutely,
getting
and
it.
yeah,
And plus
I
you
tell
help people. That's so
yeah,
cool.
I tell my students all the time that I'm one of the lucky people that can say that they love their job, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, for sure, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I totally relate with that. So I guess I'll flip flop it. I've never really talked about it on the channel before, but so what I do outside of this is my job is a behavioral therapist. Sometimes you'll hear it called a behavior analyst. And so usually behavior analysts or behavioral therapists will work exclusively with children or adults. Now, adults are is more of a niche. A lot of people forget that adults, specifically on the spectrum, need a lot of help with their behaviors and a lot of help, or depending on each person is different, or some help or assistance with learning replacement skills or to live as independently as possible. And I exclusively work with adults on the spectrum, and it truly is a spectrum. Everyone is completely different. I have clients that are much smarter than me, and vice versa. Like sometimes I'll work with a nonverbal client where they may communicate in different ways, but they communicate better than I do as a verbal person. So I work with them and just try to make sure that they're living as independently as possible. That's the goal for my line of work. Um, and I really enjoy basketball. I haven't kept up with it too much. I recently got this is so nerdy. I'm gonna be embarrassed just mentioning this. You guys will have blackmail on me, but I recently got into fingerboarding. So think about like tech decks. If you've ever seen tech decks and stuff, I used to really be into skating when I was in high school, and I fell off with that. And then I recently like went down a rabbit hole on YouTube, as we all do, and I found this fingerboarding edit or something, and I was like, holy crap, this is exactly like skateboarding, like the physics of it and how you maneuver your fingers. It's just like legs and feet. And so anything you can do on a real skateboard, you can do on a fingerboard. So I've went down that rabbit hole and I've been like so deep into fingerboarding for the past month and a half. It's been so fun. So if you guys ever want to go down a rabbit hole that is just like a whole nother world, similar to mobile gaming and its niche, go down the fingerboarding niche and let me know if you guys get into it. But it's super fun. Um, I really enjoy my dogs. I have 4 dogs. Really enjoy animals. I couldn't live once you start living with a dog, it's hard to live without one. So just know that if you guys are debating on getting a dog, it's very hard to go back. And now I have 4 of them, so I'm kind of crazy with that. Uh,
I'm the same way with my cat. Um,
ooh, a cat
uh,
guy. Yeah,
I am
I
a
love
cat.
cats.
Love cats. I love dogs too, right? I mean, I like both
Yeah.
of them. As cats are
Mm-hmm.
just a lot more low maintenance,
100%.
and it just fits with my schedule more than anything else, right? I feel like I would feel much worse because a dog needs to be around you. Cats like their alone time.
Mm-hmm.
But my so Reginald the Third is his name, and
Epic.
yes, he is a great little guy. I couldn't imagine being without him.
That's awesome. And that totally fits your lifestyle as well with 3 jobs and running a YouTube channel and who knows what else you haven't mentioned. It makes sense that you might want a more low maintenance animal, but it also still shows you love like a dog does. And I've met some cats that are more dogs than dogs. So
That is
um
true. That is true.
yeah. Where does your cat lie? Is it more like I'll love you when I want to, or is it
Yeah.
kind of a
So
dog? Okay.
so after I get home from work, and he comes up to me and just wants pets for about like 30 minutes, and then he just wants to be alone for a good portion of the day. He doesn't like being alone in a room, so I'll walk to a different
Mm.
room and he'll follow me, and we'll do that. But he doesn't like me touching him either after he is done touching me.
So it makes it just that more special when they do.
Yes,
It's some
definitely.
furry decor that follows you from room to room. It's always in the background. I have a dog that a dog named Lucy, and she's a tiny little chihuahua. She's very quiet. She never barks. I know that's hard to believe. She rarely does. She does sometimes because she's a dog. But I swear she's a cat. She's meant to be a cat. She just kind of lounges like in a windowsill, or she just wants to sit there. She'll love you when she wants to love you. Um, so I feel like I have a cat, but I don't have one. But I should have known you're cool. You like cats. I should have known. Um, so now that we've talked a little bit about ourselves outside of the channel and outside of mobile gaming, um, is there anything like we're coming towards a little bit to the latter half, so this is more of like the free willed. We can talk about whatever you want, but I do want to start it off with, is there any like goals that you have for your channel specifically for the rest of this year? I know sometimes those goals may be pretty broad or maybe they're pretty specific, but do you have anything in mind or anything that you're wanting to improve with your channel this year?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is probably getting a more streamlined way of choosing what games I review. More often than not, I will just look at what Sleepy Jared on the iOS subreddit from Touch Arcade that releases new
Hmm.
games every week. And I'm like, do any of these games catch my eye? Yes or no? And I'll try to see if I want to review one of those. If not, I go through AppRaven and I go to top games and one of the created uh, groups and look for a game there. And I have that's probably the most difficulty that I have in terms of the actual channel itself. It's just choosing what games I want to review. So I think I just need to streamline it in some way. And I don't know a good way to do it because I want to review games on both platforms on iOS and Android because I have both.
Hmm.
But especially some of the newer games that are released, more often than not, they're released on just one platform at first.
Yeah.
And so I have to wait until they're released on both platforms. Or sometimes I don't wait. Sometimes I just do it. But I wish there was a feature on something like AppRaven that integrated the Android side of things as well. And it was like, is it on both? Yes or no? And then that'll make my life so much easier because on Android there's not too many um, good platforms. I know Mini Review is great
I was
in
about to
terms of
mention
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, Mini Review is one of those that if you haven't checked it out, similar to AppRaven, it's more review focused, but they do a great job there. Worked with Nimble Thor and his crew, and I think that they're definitely one of the few mobile gaming outlets that does great reviews. Um, but I also want to cover different games that aren't on there sometimes, and so trying to find the balance of what game to play with how much time commitment can I give to the game is another big thing. Because I want to make sure that I play a significant amount to be able to give a good review. That doesn't mean always finishing the game. I just released a review on Atom RPG, and I don't know if you've played that game, but man, that game plays like an old school game, an old
Yes, it
school
does.
isometric RPG. And I realized that I am a man of luxury when it comes to video gaming at this point, where it is hard to go back once you have enjoyed some great quality of life changes that have happened over the years. Um, but that's probably the biggest thing. I think another thing for my channel is just to be consistent. So I've been lucky enough, really, over the last 4 months 3 to 4 months of posting, 2 reviews a week. That's a grind. And I would love if like I had help, right? I'd be willing to pay
Hmm.
for help. But
Yeah.
finding somebody that you know is able to work that you're able to work with is really difficult to do. And those are really the big things. I don't have too many things. I just want to be out there. I just want to give my thoughts on gaming, and I just want to have mobile gaming specifically just have a little bit more of a light on it because it's an untapped market in the sense of not many people think it's a valid form of gaming when there's some great titles on the platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I feel like slowly but surely, with the influx of indie game ports, I think slowly but surely people will at least see mobile as a gaming platform, like an actual platform, at least equivalent with other platforms that run indie games. I think with good indie game ports, it's going to expedite the process a little bit quicker than it has been. I think also when gaming or I should I say phone hardware catches up as well. Like I know there's a lot of amazing ports of like console games, like current generation console games. I know Resident Evil came out for the phone. Assassin's
Mhm.
Creed came out on the phone. However, those games are limited to the highest priced iPhone, and not many people have that. And so I think until it becomes widely available or widely affordable, um, it'll be hard to be seen on that same level, if that makes sense. But I
I think
definitely
that
think things are better. Things are definitely better than they used to be.
Oh, for sure. I think that another big thing is that most mobile gamers, at least, are not big fans of a premium price tag automatically
Exactly.
on games. And so that forces developers to either get a smaller share of the market or to come to the free to play means of monetization on the mobile gaming platform, which I have very few games do monetization well that are free to play on the platform that I've come across. I'm
Oh,
more
preach.
than happy to pay for a full title if I am getting a full title. But unfortunately, most mobile gamers are not there yet. I think the tide is changing when it comes to that. But here's to hoping that that becomes a little bit more normalized.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think I that's why I kind of fell away from TikTok. TikTok's my biggest platform so far, but I feel
Mhm.
like the TikTok viewer base is obviously on average younger. Everyone's on TikTok, but I could tell that a lot of my viewership on TikTok as a mobile gaming platform or mobile sharing mobile games, a lot of the comments would be like, "Oh, this game has you have to buy this game," and they're like so mad. So many comments are like, wait, you have to pay to get this game? And it just made me realize that the newer generation, it's like if it's and I think that comes with age too. Once you get your own income, you are more
Mhm.
willing to
Sure.
spend and buy a game too. So I do think that plays a part, but I also have seen that in fellow friends of my age, maybe people in their 20s. They're just less likely to purchase a mobile game right now. But I also think that once mobile gaming gets taken seriously as a platform, then people would be more willing to purchase that game too. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy where you can't have one side without the other, if that makes sense. So,
Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
100% agree with that. I think that one of the biggest things is you mentioned it that a lot of them don't have the means to buy a
Hmm.
game.
Hmm.
And so I know that I saw when Peglin was released, which is a
Mm,
great roguelike for anyone that hasn't
amazing.
played it.
Yeah.
But when Peglin was released, it got review bombed.
Yeah.
At least on the Android side, I think on the iOS side as
They,
well.
they did they did on iOS as well, yes.
Yeah. And it was, "Why are you what do you mean I have to pay for the game?" But the game gave you a trial of the first world, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people are expecting the full game, and I don't know, man, it's wild to me because, with a roguelike, I even playing the first world, is great, and theoretically, you could just continue to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that for free to play titles, the monetization is always really difficult. And there are some games that do it really well. There are some games that do it primarily through like cosmetic things, which is great if you have that. But either it's pay to win or it's predatory monetization. I'm okay watching ads as long as I know when the ads are coming, right? But I
Yeah.
feel like far too often it is they're giving you a lot of content and if you pay for it, you can do better than everyone else in any actual competitive or on a competitive PvP kind of game. And
Yeah.
yeah, always upset when I see that, and that's always give it a couple points lower on my review scale.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, and that's why I felt bad for. I'm glad you mentioned Peglin because that's a great example of a developer who has the right mindset, who wants people to have like that's my favorite kind of monetization model personally is kind of the demo model, which I do think is outdated and it's not as successful anymore. But I feel
Mhm.
like it kind of compromises between being able to get the game for free and play it to a certain degree and know whether you like it, and then having that price point where you can purchase the game outright for the full game. I really like that monetization model, but people totally review bomb games like that because they go in with the mindset, oh, it's free, I'm just gonna have to watch ads or something. Which I am of the party that I hate ads unless they're incentivized, and even then it kind of bothers me too because usually the game is balanced around those incentivized ads, so it's going to
Mhm.
be a crazy grind if you don't watch those ads too. I value my time, and you probably value your time way more than I do because you're way busier than I am, but uh, I value my time more, and that's why I really try to avoid ad-based models. But I feel for developers, especially on mobile, trying to monetize their games correctly, and you're already working with a very fickle player base on mobile as is, because we as content creators can't even like one of your goals is to narrow down and find the games that you want to review quicker, and narrow down that process or streamline that process a bit more. And I totally relate with that. It's so hard because there's so many releases on mobile every single week. And
Yeah,
so being a developer, having to create a game with a monetization model, and you get that release, and you release on the App Store, and your monetization model could turn away already the little player base that you were going to acquire too. So I really feel for developers. If you guys are developers listening to this, I know there's a couple subscribed to the channel. Please comment your thoughts in the comment section down below on this subject. I'd really value your guys' opinions, and I think it will open up players' eyes to how much goes into making a game, even after you've created the game. That the work is not done. So much of the stress for developers that I've talked with is the release process and the monetization process, especially on mobile. So I'd really like you guys to share your thoughts if you want, of course. Um,
definitely. Highlighting
yeah,
two games. So one of them was actually one of the first reviews that I did on the channel, and that was Tomb Raider Reloaded. I don't know if you ever played that game, but
yeah,
you mentioned that sometimes games are centered around those incentivized ads. That was one of those
hmm
games. I remembered playing it, playing the a premium version that was on. I think it was on Apple Arcade or it was on the Google Play Pass, one of the two. And it played night and day differently than the non-premium version that I played on the other platform. Just because one of them you had immediate access to all of those things that you would typically have to watch the incentivized ads for, and the other one you had to watch the ads, or more often than not you would fail a mission.
hmm
Yeah, so I definitely get that. And another game that I wanted to highlight that I think does I don't know how they are doing financially, but I know that I'm perfectly okay with it, is Inflation RPG. First of all, if you haven't played that game,
yeah,
go check it
yes,
out. But just the banner ad at the bottom that's constantly changing, that's perfectly fine with me. I wish I had an option to get rid of that. I would be more than happy to do that. But I know that like that's something that comes up a lot. Is some people really don't like banner ads either, but I'm okay with it.
hmm
I'm like a little different than you in terms of I'm okay watching ads as long as I know when they're coming and they're not just completely random. But uh, I definitely am also conscientious of my time. If there's too many, then I have to move on, right? And so finding
yeah.
that delicate balance as a developer, I'm sure, is a tough task.
I'm glad you mentioned banner ads. I'm in your same boat on that front where banner ads I forget that they're there, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
But then also having that option to remove ads, I really respect. I think that's a very safe thing that you can implement as a dev. Maybe your ads uh, are very annoying for some players. But if that ad removal is there, I'm always purchasing that if I'm enjoying your game
Mhm.
above a 7. Honestly, I'm gonna instantly buy the ad remover right outright. So I think that's also a way to kind of work around that.
Especially with
But
free to play games, I'll do that just to give the developer some money, right?
for
If I've
sure,
played the game, I like it, I'll just buy it. Just because for me at least, I don't come back to most of the games that I've played.
same.
And so a lot of times my reviews are in the moment that the review was created, and there are updates and things like of that nature that make the
Gaming
game
in the
better,
moment. I see. I
right?
see.
And it's just as games get updates, they get a little bit better. I the least that I can do if I enjoyed the game and it's free is give the developer some money. I know that the Android store and iOS is going to take their cut, but I can give them something before I have to move on to the next game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's pretty crazy when once you kind of look into the back end processes, and I'm sure you have with other developers, with how little they truly get out of those ads too. Like the amount of
Mhm.
ads and the amount of player base that you have to make a substantial amount from that is truly astonishing. And you've mentioned it multiple times, and I totally agree with it too. Is it's when the ad, if you know when that ad is coming, that totally makes it better. My biggest issue is when, like, say you're playing through a level based game and you complete a level and you're like, yes, and then you just get slammed with an ad right afterwards. It's almost like a punishment, like, congrats, you did good, but here's an ad kind of thing. It's when that ad is implemented is just as important for sure.
I would agree with that. There's one game, let's see if I could find it in my giant list of games. It was a puzzle game. It was like a fighting-ish puzzle game where like you would move and then your opponents would move. Your
Hmm.
opponents were glass. Ooh,
Oh,
I don't know.
wait, they're made out of glass? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
your opponents are made
Do they
out of
look like
glass.
figurines?
Yes,
Or wait a second.
I'm
I
gonna
think I know what
sort
you're
by
talking about.
genre. I can find the game. I'll just
Is
sort
it
by
a
genre.
circle? Is the arena kind of like a circle, like a tabletop circle, or am I thinking of something else?
I
Probably
think
thinking about something else.
I think that might be right. A Way to Smash. There you go.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
A Way to Smash. I love the game, right? I like the concept, all
Mm-hmm.
of that. The only thing that really bothered me with the game was that, like, I felt like ads were not consistent. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would, I'm a different mindset than you. Like if I complete a level, I'm okay watching an ad. If like I complete 3 levels, maybe 5 levels, whatever. As long as it's consistent. I felt like sometimes I would complete a level and I would get an ad. Sometimes I would play for like 4 levels and I wouldn't get an ad. And so that just bothered me because there wasn't any consistency to it. And so I never knew when it was coming. When it was coming, I'd just be like upset because that means that the next one could come on the very next level as well.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. A Way to
Great game.
Smash made me feel like John Wick. If you want to play like John Wick, A Way to Smash is the way to do it. Such a brilliant game. Did they have like a premium in-app purchase to just make the game premium outright? I don't
Yes.
remember.
I
Okay,
I
that's good.
I know that there were some differences between the Android and the iOS version, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
they got an update on one of the Android versions, and it like changed a lot of the game. Not the way that it played per se, but like even the way that you like leveled to going to the
That's
next
super
level was a little
interesting.
different. It was really weird. But
Yeah.
yes, great game. Go check it out. Hopefully, it still plays really well because games change.
Yeah, yeah, especially on mobile. That's the volatile nature of mobile as a platform. Like you never know when an app might just get ripped off of the app store just randomly one day, especially at certain games that you assume would be safe, like from very large, like actually very large companies are the biggest culprits of removing them, but sometimes games that I'm not expecting to get pulled off the app store do because they didn't renew their license or whatever, or you just never know, especially with like the great iOS purge whenever iOS totally purged a ton of games that were built off of previous iOS software. That was pretty
Yes.
crazy too. Has Android ever had a moment like that?
I think that Android's biggest thing is that like Android versions, like the Android will get updated and then the game just no longer functions on versions. And so you'll get like a little
Oh,
flag that says this is for an older version of the game. Like you can't even try to purchase it or you can't even download it.
holy
Um,
cow.
yeah.
And,
So
and
I've
I
seen a lot of
guess,
that. Uh-huh.
yeah, I guess the size of Android phones too. Like there's so many different types of Android phones instead of just like three variants of an iPhone. So that also probably plays a part too, I assume.
Yes, I would assume so. And then Android does have a little bit of a difference where you can download um, side files through something like TapTap,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where you can purchase the game through there and then money gets sent to the developer, but it's not from the Play Store. And so sometimes that will play differently as well. Um,
Yeah.
it's
That yeah,
wild. It's a
I
completely
learned
different
about
ecosystem.
that
Yeah.
because of Fortnite Mobile. I learned about that through Fortnite Mobile because it got pulled from iOS. And then it was still a variable on Android, but you could also sideload it. And I know recently, I think it was this past week, Apple announced that they would be allowing sideloading on iPhones, but only in Europe, which is interesting.
Really?
So I know that the Epic Games store specifically for like I think they released Fall Guys actually the same time that this released in Europe. So now you can download Fall Guys and Fortnite on an iOS device in Europe specifically, which is really interesting. It's really unfortunate that Apple's being so stubborn with side loading. I understand it to a degree. You want to offer a very safe, streamlined experience for your customer, but if the customer wants to step outside of those bounds, I think they should have the right to do so. That's one thing I really appreciate about Android is what you make it. You can take it any way you want. Um, it's interesting learning more about the Android side. I just recently, within the past like 2 months, got an Android gaming tablet, so I've been kind of learning the Android ways so that I can provide some. Like as you said, certain games will release on Android first, and so I kind of want to show the Android side of my viewers some love because I know there's a lot of them, and
Yeah.
I've been limited to the Apple for so long. So I'm learning from the best, gaming in the moment when it comes to the Android side of things.
Yeah,
Um,
it's crazy that the way that you have to develop a game, from my understanding, right? Never done it before, but the way you have to develop a game for Android and iOS is so different.
yeah,
Just like all of the functions and the functionality of the game is different. And so if you want to release them both simultaneously, you're gonna have to do a lot of work on the front end.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
and it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty unfortunate too. Like I feel like it's easier. What I've heard from some developers that I've chatted with, they're like, it would be easier to port an iOS game to Switch than port it to Android, and I'm like, that's
Mhm.
wild to me. That is absolutely wild to me. Um, but I just have a random question too. So where do you see mobile gaming in like 5 to 10 years? Because one thing I've mentioned before on this channel and probably a previous podcast, I feel like mobile gaming is eventually just going to become like everything's. I think everything's eventually going to become cloud based in a way
Mhm.
or something similar, where gaming is just going to be universal. You're going to be able to game on whatever, whenever. So I want to know your thoughts. What do you see happening to mobile gaming in like 10 years?
Oh, for sure. I think like if you're looking at 10 years from now, I think that processing powers of phones are just going to be insane and there won't be any hardware limitations or restrictions that are not allowing certain games to be developed on the mobile platform. I would
Hmm.
agree with you, only to the sense that the only difference being that I don't know if companies slash major platforms are going to be very happy about sharing on a cloud-based basis. So let's say Steam, the one game that's released on the Switch, on Steam, on a console, on mobile, I feel like you're going to have to buy all of the versions in order to access them
That's
all.
true.
Yeah.
I agree with
Uh,
that.
yeah, but I mean, outside of that, the possibilities there for sure. I think that mobile gaming in general is just going to be substantially more normalized, and I mean, we've seen more and more developers and indie developers specifically that are porting their games over to mobile, and they're being well received. And I think that that's going to, move the gaming in the right direction as it relates to mobile. and I'm really excited for it. I think that a lot of the younger generation, mobile gaming is their first experience in gaming, and I think that with hopefully creating a better landscape, that experience can at least be a good one, where they're not just trying to get loot boxes and monetized out their eyes the entire time. I I'm hopeful. I'm more hopeful than I am pessimistic about the future outlooks of the mobile gaming sphere. Thus, I'm still here, right?
Yeah. I'm with you on that. We wouldn't be here if we didn't see the potential of mobile gaming. That's for sure. Especially pouring in all the numerous hours that we've mentioned before too. Creating mobile gaming content. It's definitely going places. I don't see it stopping. You made a fantastic point that I've never really thought about, at least consciously, where the younger generation, their first they're not going to be playing a Game Boy Color. They're going to be playing on a phone. They're going to be playing
Mhm.
on a tablet, and the first gaming experiences they might have is on a phone. So that's really cool to think about. So with these older generations and the younger generations coming up, I think that will naturally. That's a really good point. Really cool to think about. I think
What
the
was
younger
your first
generations.
gaming experience?
What was my first gaming experience? Is that what you
Yeah.
said?
What was your first,
Uh,
not mobile, like, maybe it was mobile, but, like, not just gaming in general. What
Um,
brought you to gaming?
the Super Nintendo. I actually collect. That's another thing about me is I collect, or I used to, but now it's very pricey. I'm glad
Mhm.
I was into collecting Super Nintendo before it got popular because now it is very expensive. But my first gaming experience was at my cousin's. His family was very affluent. I'll put it that way, and they had like a Super Nintendo, and they had like every game you could think of under the sun.
Mhm.
And I remember playing I think the first game I ever tried was uh, Super Star Wars, and those games were hard. But the Super
They
Star
were.
Wars games, and also obviously the original Game Boy, Super the it was the first Mario game released on the black and white, like eat your batteries Game Boy. I don't remember what Super Mario Land is probably what it's called or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, that was also early classic Pokemon Blue, as well. But those are three of my earliest memories with gaming for sure. But what about you?
So for me, my earliest gaming memory was probably when I was like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. I remember playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, so
Um,
good.
yes, great game. And that's probably took up a lot of my time, and that's probably my happiest memories with gaming. Um, and then transitioning probably more to console based gaming with the Nintendo 64. Played Nintendo 64 a lot. Played Quest 64. Like, I went back and looked and realized that the game was really bad. But as a younger person, that game was all I ever wanted. Um, and then I was basically just played consoles majority of my life. I had both Xbox and PlayStation. Um, but I played mobile gaming uh, by stealing my phone from my sister and downloading mobile games from there whenever I didn't have access to my own console. And so that was mobile gaming for me when I was younger.
You were playing a stealth game in real life, stealing the
Yes.
phone and then playing on the phone. That's awesome. I wish so I never really experienced. I played a little bit of Nintendo 64 at a friend's house when I was like in late elementary school, early middle school. But I never the Nintendo 64 strangely, like I was the perfect age to have that be like my system of my childhood. But I
Hmm.
totally skipped that generation. I've barely played any Nintendo 64. The first like I was more of a GameCube guy. I still stand by the GameCube is like my favorite Nintendo system of all time. It just had so
It's,
many amazing first party games as well as just great ports from other consoles. Um, really enjoyed the GameCube. But the
I would
first
agree.
console I
It's
ever
definitely one of the
owned,
best.
yeah, oh, 100%. The first console I ever owned personally was a Game Boy Advance SP. which was also a great first console to own, and then followed by an Xbox. So that was what was the first? You owned the Super Nintendo, I assume, right? That was your first one.
Think that was probably my first one. Yeah, and that was when
Hmm.
I was in Mexico visiting family. I got it.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I had a good time playing that. I had the Game Boy Color, and then I got the
So,
SP, DS, all of that. I actually, one of my favorites. So handheld gaming is something that I spent a lot of time on. One of my
yeah,
favorite
same.
consoles of all time, of all of them that I've ever had, was the PlayStation Vita.
Dude,
Uh,
amen. You
yes,
know your stuff.
yes. I love the PlayStation Vita. It was upsetting when they shut everything down and they
So
stopped
ahead of its
releasing
time, by
support.
the way.
I
So
would
ahead of
agree.
its time. It
Yes,
was the Switch before the Switch, man. Like they
I would
had a
agree.
dock for it and everything. Like crazy.
Yes, it was an incredible handheld device.
What was your favorite game for it that you can only have experienced on PS Vita?
Um, was it Gravity Rush? Gravity Rush was great. I think
Yeah,
that was the
Gravity Rush
easiest.
was awesome.
Gravity Rush was great. I played probably way too much Binding of Isaac on that though.
Ooh, wow, that's dangerous. I never got it on the PS Vita, but ooh,
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Binding of Isaac is probably, if I take into consideration all of the hours of all the games I've ever played, that's it for me.
I loved the PSP too, honestly. Like I feel like the PlayStation handheld systems were so good. Like did you ever play I think they released one on Vita as well. Patapon? Have you ever heard of Patapon?
Never played Patapon. No.
It's a rhythm-based RTS of sorts, honestly. So it's on a 2D plane, and
Hmm?
you have to choose which units to summon or whatever to attack your opponent. But in order to get the most out of their attacks, and while you're summoning these units, you're tapping specific buttons within rhythm, and the music was like very drum based, like very like I don't know, like it's very hard to describe, but if you guys are listening to this and you've never heard of Patapon, I hope I'm saying it correctly. It's such a unique series of games, and it was only on the PSP, and I think they released one on the PS Vita as well. However, I do think my favorite handheld system of all time was the original DS. Just having that touchscreen, I definitely played the most. That's where I discovered Metroidvanias. I love Metroidvanias.
Hmm.
Dawn of Sorrow was one of my favorites on the Nintendo DS. Just so many unique experiences that you could only have on the DS. And now with emulators released on Apple, I've downloaded so many games that I own. By the way, everyone, I own them. But I downloaded them on the emulator too, so that I could play them on the phone. The DS on phone just feels so natural and so good. If you guys have not tried that, definitely check it out.
I used to
Um,
be a completionist, and that was a problem.
Oh
There's
man.
Yeah, there's a
So-
lot of games that I had to just stop playing or not even start because I knew that that was going to be an issue.
are you like a completionist in the sense that you have to get all of the achievements, or are you completionist that you
Yes,
have to complete a game before? Oh, you were the achievement. You were a true completionist. Oh
yes, I
man.
would. I would definitely grind PlayStation trophies, just get platinum on everything, 100% all of the games. And then same when I had Xbox.
Oh my word. I've never been the type to go for achievements. I used to be very it would be hard for me to start another game until I beat the first game, so playing it to completion technically, but
Mhm.
not getting all the achievements on the side. Or else, man, I feel like was that stressful at times, or did you
Uh,
just enjoy it?
so I really, really enjoyed it, but it got to the point where it was stressful, and it got
Mm,
so I, especially when I was in undergrad, I basically I stopped gaming for probably 3 years, I want to say,
wow.
um, just because I couldn't start a game knowing that I'd have to complete it 100%,
Mm,
and the time commitment that would go into that, and the muscle memory that goes into becoming a completionist for a lot of games. I
yeah.
just couldn't manage that, and at that time, I was working 2 jobs and doing undergrad, and I couldn't do it, man. And
How,
so I
how did you
stopped
how did you
gaming.
get over it? Was it that 3 year break that you took and just resetting and having a different mindset, or what
Yeah,
helped you get over that?
I think, honestly, mobile gaming helped me get over that. So mobile gaming was my first dip back into gaming to any capacity after my hiatus of gaming itself. Because games felt, I would try a game, especially on Steam. Steam's really bad about this, and it's not their fault at all, but it's just it creates an environment where you play a game, you play maybe 20 minutes of it, and you're like, I'll just refund it. I didn't really like it. And I did that for so many games.
Holy, that is so relatable.
Yeah. And I was just tried out mobile gaming. I played a couple of games, and I was like, this isn't bad. I can definitely do this. And more often than not, I can do this and take bite-sized enjoyment of the games and just move on to the next one. Right. I was
Mhm.
able to see a game through finally. So another great title that I need to mention, one of the first titles that I reviewed was like Forward Escape the Fold.
Oh,
I
so good. I
I
loved
was
that game.
lucky enough to review that, I think when it was released, if I'm not mistaken, or around the time that it was released. And I was like, man, this game is great. And I now remember why I loved gaming back then.
Yeah, what a wraparound, by the way. That was very clever to tie us right back into mobile gaming. That's really cool.
For
That's
sure.
kind of what got you over the completionist mindset, which is I'm glad you don't have to suffer from that anymore because I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it. Like it stresses me out just thinking about having to get every achievement in a game. Like I just immediately feel anxiety. So, wow. But we're kind of coming a little bit over the 1 hour mark, so I guess we can wrap this up. It's been I could talk to you forever, honestly, at this point. But so is there anything in conclusion that you'd like to plug or mention as an outro for yourself? Is there anything? Let us have it right now.
I mean, I think the only thing that I want to say is, yeah, I hope that if you are an aspiring reviewer for mobile gaming, the platform and the ecosystem is hungry for more reviewers, right? And so if you want to
Hmm.
go out and review games, I think more power to you. I wish there were more mobile game reviewers out there, and I am happy to, give any tidbits, any advice that I went through, any hardships that I went through, and just help guide you through the process. The community is super accepting, and I've really glad that I got the opportunity to talk to Mint City because one of the few on the in the mobile game ecosystem. It's been a fun time so far. I'm not going to plug my channel or anything like that. I think we've done that a couple of times already. If you want any reviews, I have over 100 on my channel. But I think the bigger thing is just trying to get the word out there for mobile gaming in general. I think that's priority number one.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm a big believer that everyone should at least try making a YouTube channel once in their life about something that they are passionate about or that they enjoy or something that you always like talking about to your friends or your family or whatever. You might as well try talking about it on the internet. So, if that's mobile gaming for you, I totally echo gaming in the moments sentiment that hey, you should share your thoughts. You should write a review, make a video and you're gonna look back on it. I'm with you in this aspect as well. That on your first few videos, they're not gonna be good. Let's be frank. They're not gonna be where you want them to be. But I look back at those as a virtual journal, like I mentioned in the previous podcast episode, that really like brings me a lot of joy seeing how far I've come and then also seeing where I was at and remembering and feeling those memories that time of my life. It's something that I wouldn't have outside of YouTube because I haven't figured out a way to do that outside of YouTube. So if you guys have ever debated, just start. We'll definitely show you some love. Maybe we can have you on the podcast with us. One, I might have you back on in the future for sure because it's very pleasant talking to someone else in the mobile gaming niche in a podcast format. But I do want to get Silent Rocco on here. I know you're still listening to this, Silent Rocco. So if we could have all three of us in a podcast episode in the future, that would be like my my Three Musketeers moment. That would be really cool. So if
That
you're
would be
down, I'm
awesome.
down. Yeah, I have
I'm
to
also
speak it out.
sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to manifest that right here, right now. I believe in that. So, yeah, Silent Rocco, let me know. Feel free to DM me or comment down below if you're down. I think it would be really cool to talk to him about his mime, his mime culture. Like it truly is like a culture. It's really cool watching his content. It's a whole world I never knew about, and I think it would make it would be good to get to know him. Maybe he doesn't want to put that out on the internet, but I just think he's so fascinating as an individual. So I figured I'd mention that last, and check out Gaming in the Moment. I know I've plugged it a couple times, but plug it one more time. He should be your go-to YouTube mobile game reviewer. He does a fantastic job with mobile game reviews. I truly believe he's the best doing it currently. And I'm not just saying that to suck up or be nice. I truly believe that. So check out his content. If there's ever a game that you're debating on buying, go check it out first. And then, yeah. Thanks for listening to the end of the podcast. It's been a long one, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like, pop a sub, all of that YouTuber jazz. Comment down below. I love talking to you guys above all. So I hope you guys are staying safe. Again, thank you so much, Gaming in the Moment, for being here. And take it easy, guys.